All right, so here is a cubic one. Again, same idea with the square roots. Do you remember where we started with the square root graphs? X-intercepts. So wherever the graph is equal to 0, and I'll just pull the one up onto the side that we're going to do. Wherever we have x-intercepts, those points are going to stay the same because the square root of 0 is 0. What other point stays the same? 1. Do we have any values here where y is equal to 1? Yes. Okay, it's going by 2's here, so we have to go. There it is. That's where y is equal to 1. All right. So now that you've got that, if you wanted to, you could take the square root of some other values. Like this point here is where y is 2. If we think, what is the square root of 2? Anybody have that value memorized? Just me? Okay. It's 1.4. 1. So if you wanted to estimate that, that's going to be at 1.4. That would be there. Now remember, anything that's between 0 and 1 is going to be above your graph, and anything below, anything that is after 1 for y values, then your final graph will be below the graph. So what about this section from here to here? Will it be above it or below it? It'll be above it. So you just have to estimate how much above it. It won't go past 1, because if it went past 1, then there would be a point where the y value was 1. So this is our final graph. Our domain, x is bigger than or equal to -1. And our range, y is bigger than or equal to 0. And the questions you can do for this are 10 and 12. Can you see that example 1, 2, and 3 are basically the same thing over and over and over again? Every time we find the values that are 0, we find the values that are 1. Then between the y values of 0 and 1, your graph is going to be above the graph. And after the y values that are larger than 1, your graph is going to be below the original graph. For this one, eventually, because this was an x cubed graph, our blue graph eventually will turn into an x to the 1.5 graph, which we don't really know what that looks like, but it's a little bit more than a line and a little bit less than a parabola. Because this one is an x cubed graph. And does it make sense if you square root an x cubed graph that that's the same as the power 1/2? So we get an x to the 3/2 graph, which we've never graphed before. We don't know what that looks like, but it's more than a line and less than a parabola. Because an x to the 1 would be a line, which is a straight line, and an x squared graph is a parabola, and this is 1.5. So it's somewhere in between there. So whatever you have is this shape afterwards, as long as you don't go crazy and start doing loops and stuff like that, you're going to be fine.